Leanpub is a startup founded on idea. And the idea, defined a couple years ago, is that lean publishing is the act of self-publishing a book while you're writing it, evolving it with feedback from your readers, and finishing a first draft before optionally using the traditional publishing workflow. So our idea was authors should just self-publish their books in progress. And as they write them, get them out there, get feedback from their readers, get people to care, and then when it's done, maybe if you want to, talk to a publisher. That was the idea a couple years ago when we launched Leanpub. Both Scott and I have written technical books. My first book, I did this. My second book, I should have done this. Scott's first book, he should have done that.
Absolutely.
So now, over the past couple of years of building Leanpub, we've evolved our thinking a little bit. And with that, the definition of lean publishing, which is more inclusive and ambitious now, it's the act of publishing an in-progress ebook using lightweight tools and many iterations to get reader feedback and pivot until you have the right book and build traction once you do. So the subtlety here is that it's expansive. It's expanded from just self-published authors to everyone, authors, self-published authors, publishers. The focus again is on lightweight tooling because we realize how essential it is that the tools you use to produce your book be really lightweight and let you do iterations with basically, if there's a whole bunch of friction and pain and suffering involved in creating a book and releasing it, you won't do that very much, and you'll be stuck in the workflow that people have used for the last 50 years with computers and the last hundreds of years writing books, and we need to fix them. Now, our product configurations have evolved too. So when we launched, Leanpub was based on WordPress. And the idea was, hey, why don't you sit down in your web browser and write a book? That's what people do with WordPress and for blogs. Why don't we do that for books? But that's kind of a really bad idea. I would not want to write a book in my web browser. You can write blog posts, link things in a web browser, that's fine. Writing a book in a web browser is a terrible idea. Other people have tried that too since us, and I think they've come probably to similar conclusions. We then were stubborn, so we're like, hey, let's add in a fancy little tree viewer in Flex on the side, and then have our tree viewer with Flex and then a terrible WordPress interface for writing a book in HTML and do that. And then we're like, you know what? Let's have the version for people that want to do that, and then we'll add something we'd use, which is Markdown and Git. And so we have the terrible and the elitist, right? So because Markdown's fine, it's accessible and nice and happy and all that. Git is not exactly the most normal human-friendly thing in the universe. And then we ended up evolving to where we are now, which is you write your book in Markdown, you sync with Dropbox, click one button, your book exists.
And to be clear, that happened because of a conversation with an author who beat us over the head with it.
Yeah.
And then it took us even.
Well, the funny thing is the author beat us over the head, but
it still took
Ken
us a while.
actually said Dropbox as one of the ideas earlier. We had the idea of Dropbox internally, and we had an author say, So having that helps. Now, along the way, our target customers have evolved. When we started, our first customers were bloggers. Eric Reese, which I'm sure needs no introduction here, was our first customer. And the Venture Hacks guys, Nibby in particular, was our second. And they had blogs, and the idea was, well, we have all this good content in our blog, why can't we just make a book out of it? And I thought, well, we can. We're working on this stuff, and it would be really easy to make a book out of your blog. Just import it into WordPress, and then take it and put it through our book generation stuff. Done. But we didn't really, we'll get into whether or not that was a good business later. It evolved into, well, bloggers or technical book authors, because the idea of, look, we're technical book authors, we understand what technical book authors want to do, and why can't you use your workflow to write your technical book in progress, etc. And then we evolved that into the notion of, this is for authors of self-published in progress ebooks. So you're writing your book, you're publishing it in progress, you're self-publishing it, and you're an author. So that's the target, how the target customer evolves. And now, again, just recently, we just expanded into just authors and publishers of in-progress ebooks. So basically, Leanpub being the way that if you're going to write an ebook and produce an ebook and sell it while it's in progress, we want to be the best way in the world to do that. And I think we're actually quite a long way toward that.
Yeah, and if we talk to a year from now, I think the in progress is going to be scratched off.
Maybe, so that's the goal. Now, along with that, this is the part that's less sort of structured.
So that's the quick run.
That's the overview of where we are. Now the fun. So our hypotheses have evolved. First one, publishing your blog is a sustainable business.
So when you're sitting beside Eric Rees and having a beer and he says, would you like to publish my blog? You say yes. He's going to be your first customer.
Yeah.
But there's still a really open question about, okay, people are going to buy Eric's blog, but is this a good business? Are there thousands of people out there who have blogs that are going to click a button, turn them in the book, sell the content of their blog as an ebook?
And also, and more specifically, to take your blog and put it into the ebook and then not do any curating, not do any editing. We affectionately call them blog barfs, where you take a blog, just import the entire RSS feed, and then put it into a PDF, EPUB movie, and ta-da, money appears, right? Like Venture Hacks, at one point I think it was over 1,400 pages. And yeah, they had images and stuff, but still it was hundreds and hundreds of pages even without images. And Eric's book, Eric's actually was really good. Like, frankly, like reading his Leanpub book is just as much fun as reading like the Lean Startup. Like, it's a really good, because his writing is really good, right?
But there's still stuff in there like, I'm going to be
here on Tuesday.
Here tomorrow. That
You know,
can be taken
that
out.
needs, we should take that out. No, you're not there Tuesday. That's 2010, Eric. So most, even if you're Eric Rees, your blog should be curated. And say for example, the most famous, I think from my perspective, example of a blog that got essentially turned into a book is 37 Signals. They did a book called Getting Real, and it did rather well. I think it made them over $500,000, selling $20 PDFs. And then they went and rewrote that book again and called it Rework, and showed up on the New York Times bestseller list, right? The notion of doing a book out of your blog first, and then doing the real book, with a real publisher, and doing the normal way, was kind of how the world was working when Leanpub started, with 36 Signals and Eric Rees, etc. So now the funny thing is that since we sort of moved away from then, people sort of follow us. So Hyper Inc., there was a startup that got some funding from Andreessen Horowitz, and they're like, they launched this thing they called their imprint, which was basically a blog into book thing, and they're like, our number one competitor is Leanpub, so yay, we're competing with Mark Andreessen funded thing. Which is awesome, and I think they're doing better than what we did, in that what they had is, their model was import a thing, have a team of unemployed English majors do the curating, editing for you, and then they make the real book out of it, because Mr. Important Person or Ms. Important Person is too busy to do that grunt work, pay some grunt to do that, and then the book goes out. But
that's where we would have had to go.
That's where we should have, had we decided to focus on that, that's probably what we should have done. But the thing is, I don't really want to do that. Like, if the author isn't putting if the things that make the author worth reading, like their unique perspective on things, they're not going to bring it. If they're not bringing it to the process of curating and writing and making the book out of it, then I don't want to read that thing either. I'd rather just read their blog posts than read someone else's curated version of what they had put their time into at the beginning. So we didn't want to be in the business of producing sort of second-rate crap. So then our hypothesis: WordPress is a good platform to use to write a book. Well, we disagree with that hypothesis.
I mean, if neither Peter or I could bring ourselves to actually use it,
there's a clue about your product.
Clue. And by the way, we're totally open to questions.
Yeah, these are intended to be like interrupt us.
What's wrong with WordPress?
WordPress itself is okay. I mean, the code base, but the idea is sitting in a web browser in TinyMCE, like the HTML editor, that and you're like you lose your internet connection, or you accidentally hit the back button, or there's enough sort of, you just don't want to write a book there. Like a blog post, yeah, great, it works really well. Like it's the right amount of length, like
yeah.
But something that you're supposed to sit down and deal with, like the first notion is, okay, a book is a bunch of ideas, they relate to each other. Well, more so than just a chronological series of small things like a blog. Okay, so you got to be able to navigate sort of. It's like the equivalent between a tape drive and and SSD, right? Like a tape drive, you have to go sequentially, versus like you should be able to jump around anywhere and look at any part of your book and think, how does this relate to this? And that's kind of really bad in a blog. Like the min interface of dealing with blog posts doesn't really work. So then we were stubborn, so we said, okay, well, let's just build a tree widgety thing in Flex, and then build a Rails thing and store and do stuff and graft this Frankenstein monstrosity of that onto WordPress, And well, that was kind of crap too. So we realized people want to write books in the tools that they're comfortable with and that they enjoy using. And the tool that the people that we're programmers, and programmers, we love our text editors. Like if I'm going to write a book, I want to do it in Emacs, right? Someone else would be like, I want to use TextMate, or I want to use VI, or I want to use Notepad, or you have your place, you sit down and you're comfortable in your tool. And writing a book is hard enough, and if you have to learn some different new tool to do it, good luck, have fun, right? Like it's not going to happen. So
yeah, and it's just like, I don't even like writing blog posts in WordPress. So I want my tools, I want to be able to jump around the text and flow it and change it and search it, and working in this tiny little window in a web browser that's not designed for that. You hit the tab key and you're somewhere else, and it's not designed for that.
yeah, I mean that's why. Go ahead.
Is WordPress used as actually writing tool, or are we just mostly using it as a publisher?
We don't use it at all anymore. This was a,
But do
In
people?
general,
So-
of course it is. I mean, even if I write blogs for WordPress, I never write it.
right, exactly. You paste it in.
I write it in some word processor, and then I put it in WordPress. So
Right.
considering that the end goal is publishing and getting the work and making the work available for general comment, then
No, it's as a publishing platform, it's fine. It's a CMS, right? Like, and lots of people use WordPress as a CMS, and there's lots of people make their living customizing WordPress for various clients, and it's perfectly fine. Like nothing against WordPress, it does its job very well. Just against the idea of using it to do a job with book authoring tool.
I think with a book, the point is that you have to be able to see the whole thing and jump from point to point very quickly, and WordPress doesn't work so well for that.
So another hypothesis we had was that HTML is a good way to write a book. And HTML being like, you take some subset of HTML and say, okay, this is how I'm gonna put in the stuff that I'm writing my book out of. And the problem is that, for me personally, I have like creative artsy brain, and I have programmer brain, and programmer brain writes good programming code sometimes and bad code other times, and artsy brain writes words, and HTML is kind of sort of forces you into this mishmash of, right? So we ended up really concluding that
Like, there's a few
It's
things
close.
there. We were driven to that because we already were writing in WordPress, and that outputs HTML. We were importing from RSS feeds from your blogs, that's HTML. So it was the easy path. It set some expectations for our authors. They were like, well, in HTML,
I can
do this with CSS and this with CSS, and we can't or don't want to do that with all of our outputs. So
Because
I think that was a real struggle too, is that expectation had to be sort of chopped off, and
Yeah,
that was
and
a hard
so-
conversation all the time.
the notion of like, okay, we produce PDF, EPUB, and MOBI. Well, EPUB is just HTML, and you can just generate MOBI out of EPUB. So why can't you do all your HTML tricks to make your ebook? And the answer is, well, we also produce PDF, and so you don't really want to start with anything you can do in HTML and expect something reasonable to come out with PDF. And the other idea is, more fundamental idea is, for Leanpub and Lean Publishing to work, authors need to be focused on words, not on, here's how I laid this out, and I want this layout, and this, like, if you're focused on that kind of stuff, then the workflow of producing lots of stuff and doing lots of revisions and getting lots of feedback and releasing early, releasing often, etc., it's not going to happen. And so we realized the impetus mismatch was just there. So then we arrived at what we think is the correct hypothesis, is that Markdown is a good way to write a book. And I mean, Markdown, it's just a way of producing HTML, right? You can parse HTML, you can get Markdown out of HTML. You can go from Markdown to HTML, and from, like, Markdown produces a subset of HTML, right? But it's the subset of HTML focused on writing. And so if you're going to sit down and write some HTML and you want to focus on your words, Markdown is a good way to do it. And so, hey, a writing format lets you focus on your words, minimal formatting. Is that a good way to write a book? And that was, we're pretty smart, so it took us about a year and a half to get to this.
Yeah.
But,
But there were some huge benefits there. One was that before, every time we said, and you can write in HTML or Markdown in our copy, we could just say Markdown. And before we were sort of saying, we had to help people make that decision
we
between HTML
literally
and
had a
Markdown.
version of our homepage.
Yeah.
We were like, do you want to import your blog and edit it and do it be in the WordPress?
Yeah.
HTML. Do you want to write from scratch using words and stuff?
So there was some real smell there in our copy editing and what that worked. And I think it was really confusing for authors. It was not one clear message. And this way we get to be more opinionated. We get to say, you should write in Markdown, here's one. And just sort of bang, 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 bang. And once you do that, then people start trusting you.
Cool authors use Markdown.
Well, I mean, or else like the notion of if you want to focus on your words, not on I want my image here and I want to flow the text. For example, people ask us how do I do the nice text layout around my images, and we're like, you don't, it's Markdown. You put the image in and your text goes above it and below it, and your layout's going to look like that. And chances are, if you went and did something nice, your ebook reader would mangle it anyway. Really, and you know what? You should do the layout stuff when you're done your book, not when you're on page 20. Because if you're focusing on laying out images in page 20, you won't get to page 200.
So part of like, writing a book is really hard, and if you
Really
have
hard.
the opportunity to procrastinate, you're going to do it. So if we can take away an opportunity to procrastinate, that's a good thing.
It's like the writing tools like IA Writer and Write Room and all that are like, get rid of all your UI, and there's words and it's as close to a typewriter as you can get, right? That's kind of what we've achieved because you can use those tools to write a Leanpub book.
Do you find that the type of authors that write the book would affect the way that they actually put it out? For example, if I'm a nonfiction writer, I write things in a different way. But if I'm a fiction writer, I tend to write multiple different versions and have different tracks depending on which I like. So I don't know whether to be honest, this is the first time hearing Leanpub for me, so I haven't used it. But if I'm a fiction writer and I'm creating prose, do I have the ability, like I saw you use Git and then you switched off from Git into use Dropbox.
Yeah.
But again, like, how do I deal with multiple versions if I'm a fiction writer?
Well, so first of all, the tools that any fiction author uses right now don't provide that. They have Word, right?
Yeah.
And maybe they have track changes turned on. So we're not competing against something that provides that kind of workflow. Dropbox has a bit of a
Version.
Yeah.
It's not great. I've actually never used it.
I just get like someone says conflicting copy every now and again.
Yeah.
The one thing is you can choose what goes into your book. So like let's say you're this is what I'm jumping in. Here's how you write the Leanpub book. You have a file called book.txt. It's really complicated. It's a list of file names, one per line. That's it. And so the file names are just text files where you write your book in Markdown. And so you can write whatever you want. You can have all kinds of stuff you're experimenting with and whatever. But what we actually go and make an ebook out of, a PDF, EPUB, and MOBI, is what's defined in book.txt. And the way you make a sample book is you take that and you copy and paste it, and you rename that to be called sample.txt. And then you just delete some stuff. So your sample is a smaller version of your book, right?
So if you have some experimental chapters or stuff that's not ready yet, you just don't put it in book.txt.
And the other thing is you preview, we don't preview for you. You click a button to preview. So if you're writing and you don't like what you're doing, we'll just, no one's going to automatically see it. You have to preview it by clicking a button on our website. And then when you're happy, you go click a different button to publish. That's all previewing and publishing is. But yeah, so like and in terms of for versioning, if you're someone who say is like I love Git, then I use Git, and so we ignore Git directories, and so you can use Git. Like lots of our authors, like myself included, use Git for their own Leanpub books themselves, and the book can be stored on GitHub as well. It's just the way that, for us, Dropbox is just the equivalent of handing me a floppy disk. I'm the Leanpub website, you hand me, here's the book, and when the manuscript book comes out, right? The Dropbox is just file sync, nothing more. We could use Git, we could use FTP, we could use whatever, it doesn't matter. And so, yeah.
So,
Hypothesis.
this was more of I think a technical hypothesis and do people usability hypothesis. So the first way we tested this was Peter was giving a talk at BCIT and he said, how many people here have Dropbox installed? And everybody over 30 put up their hands.
No. I say, how many people have heard of Dropbox?
I've heard it.
Yeah, everyone put up their hand. I'm like, how many already have it installed? Everyone but like 2 people.
Yeah, it was.
At other colleges, it was slightly less, but like seriously, everybody. Well, here we go. How many people have heard of Dropbox? How many people already have Dropbox on their computer? Right.
Yeah. So that was pretty good. We went to a coffee shop that we go to a lot, and we asked the baristas, "Do you guys use Dropbox?" And they all said yes. So we were like, "Okay, we think we got some pretty good that people know what it is. They're not going to have to install an extra program." Some of our authors whine about it, that they don't want to install.
Or the Dropbox is we're the only reason they have Dropbox on their computer. It's like, you know what? It's okay.
It's not 100% great. And then we had some technical hurdles that we had to get over here and some usability issues about if, say there's 3 people writing a book and they both edit the same file, what happens and stuff. But in the end, it turned out that really didn't happen that often, and it wasn't, nobody has really complain
Yeah,
about.
and the other thing is, like, two people editing the same file, even if you can make it work technically, isn't going to produce good results in terms of what the words are, usually anyway. Like, the nice thing about, like, we don't say every book has to be one gigantic file. I mean, I write that way, but most people don't. You have a list of files. If you want to chop them up, like one per chapter, one per subsection of a chapter, or whatever, like, works totally fine. So people have collaborated. Like, you write like one per like recipe, like your cookbook, like the technical cookbooks.
Yeah.
One recipe per file, right? So if someone wants to add a recipe, boom.
Yeah, I think that works really well.
Yeah, and the nice thing is, more generally, the notion of if you're going to build a business and say, okay, a core part of our business is this third party that has no business relationship with us at all. Will that fly? Will people be okay with that? Will they be okay with using a different thing? Yeah, it actually just people.
Dropbox's infrastructure now, I think, is what we're hearing.
You can build on it. Like, you can build real things on it, and that's sort of true now. But 2 years ago, it was a bit more of a risk than it is now, I think.
So this one was a bit earlier in the life, and this was when we were first publishing Eric and Nivi's books. And Nivi made us do this. He was like, we're publishing content that's completely free on the internet, and all we're doing is taking it and turning it into an ebook. So we need to email everybody who's bought this book and say, hey,
why did you buy this?
Are you okay with that? Did you know what you were getting into, and are you upset? And it turned out that everybody was like, yeah, this is great. So we had no idea. We did some crazy pricing experiments too.
Oh yeah.
We had people buy the Venture Hacks Bible for $99, and then we brought it down to $25 and refunded everybody who had bought the $99 book. So we did a whole bunch of pushing around the price and playing with it and making sure nobody was upset.
Yeah, we sort of A/B tested, not really A/B test because we didn't do them at the same time, because we didn't want to have a situation where two people could be like on different computers buying the same book at the same time with different prices. But we did as close to that as we could, where we just over days just set different prices. And then when we ended up arriving at the price, we refunded everyone the difference who paid higher, just because that's not the way you're supposed to A/B test things, but that's the way we felt like A/B testing it, because we just.
Certainly not the way Amazon does it.
No, of course
No,
not.
exactly, and that's part of our point, is that really people get upset. Right?
Well, and the other thing is we're doing customer development, right? Amazon's not doing customer development.
Yeah.
They figured out their business, so we went, at that point we wanted to talk to people.
So one of the things we learned there was that that picking a price is really hard.
Really hard.
And that our authors would actually write their book and be done writing their book and spend a week trying to figure out what they were going to price their book at. And they'd email us, and they'd be like, they'd go onto the Google group, and they'd be like asking questions. And there was a lot of angst.
And one of the things we did to try to help with that is so before the book is published, we have a landing page. And your landing page is like, here's the book, here's the nice attractive cover image, or else a really ugly default generated thing about the book text, about the author, etc. And then we had a thing, interested in this book? Encourage the author, and we still have this. Say put your name in, your email in, and what you'd pay, or what you'd like to pay. And no, not Kickstarter, you're not like actually buying in advance. It's just give some encouragement. When the book is first published, we will send you exactly one email saying, book's out, here you go, you can go buy it now if you want to. And then that way the authors could get so-and-so $10, so-and-so $15. We have someone there now who's almost got 1,000 people queued up waiting to buy his book. And lots of the prices are $10, $15. Like it's amazing. Like just this pent up demand, right?
Was it open form, or did you have options like 10, 15?
No, you just type in a number.
Just type in a number. Yeah.
And like the minimum viable product, like literally Peter sitting there, I'm going to put in 3 HTML fields. Like the most minimal thing ever, right?
And people put in, about $32, like in text, and it blows everything up.
So they weren't right.
No, we were not steering people.
Yeah.
And so the funny thing is, and then you get all this data, and then we're like, okay, so how do we help authors? So we wrote this funny page where we're like, and it's still there because we were actually stupidly lazy, we didn't change it yet. Where it's useful, but it doesn't take into account the sliders, right?
Yeah.
So we have the median is this, the mean is this. If you want to maximize money, charge this. If you assume that blah, 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 all this kind of stuff for stats geeks, right? And we're like, but you can just pick the average price, which is blah. But the funny thing is, it's a hard question, right? And you can't even answer it, because are you trying to reach the most people, or are you trying to maximize your profit just off the book? You can't answer it.
Most people who write a book actually make way more money off the increase in their consulting rate than they'll ever get from selling the books.
Or
Really, you should give the book away for free.
If they're
right?
superstars, there's speaking fees, right? Now, but the funny thing is, we realized, okay, you know what works really well is places where there's a suggested donation. Like, I mean, everything from like the sandcastles in Parksville to like, random art thing or whatever, it doesn't have a fee per se. Quite often it's like a suggested donation. So you typically pay the suggested donation or you pay more. And then there's places like Humble Bundle and other places that have this notion of you can choose how your money gets distributed. Now for Leanpub, one of the interesting things is we pay our authors really, really well. Like a $10 book, they make $8.50. A $20 book, $17.50. And so
What if the author wanted to give it away for free?
they can do that,
And then, but you're,
making nothing.
That's okay. It doesn't cost as much.
We don't care. We're seriously, we encourage, like, the only thing authors can't do is sell it for between 1 cent and 98 cents. We don't let you. If you, like, we'd rather you give it away for free than sell it for 95 cents. Because PayPal takes so much of the money and we take so much money that you'd be making almost nothing, and that's bad, right? So you have to charge at least $1 or zero. And so the interesting thing about this, about the notion of sliders, is like, okay,
We should probably, can we put
This
up
is-
the
form? Yeah, we should totally do this, because this is like one of the most interesting things about Leanpub, and surprising everyone. Oh, we can't because we're not on the internet.
.dev.
Yeah, okay, fine. I'll just run it. One second. Yeah, I don't need to. Leanpub dev.
That's not up there.
It will be. It's in there.
Cool. So this is just on Peter's machine, which is why, and we don't have access to S3, which is why the image isn't showing up.
I'll just shrink my browser window. Hold on a second. So let's say I go to a book. This is like locally. But all we care about right now is the pricing. So say I click the buy button, and I see minimum price is $0, suggested price is $2. Go buy. We have sliders, and so it's like you can pay nothing, or you can pay 99 cents. But if you're paying 99 cents, the author's only getting 39 cents, and that's kind of lousy. Let's make that better. Let's make the author get $1. Or we're feeling really nice. The author seems like a good guy. Let's give him more money. So it's getting nicer and darker green.
We thought about putting smiley.
We were gonna have like food on a table being taken away as but you get really neat things, right? Where you get people paying like amounts like $11.66, say, and it's like, why would anybody ever do that? Well, because then the author gets $10. Like people play with the sliders and adjust it, and they like and the author gets so much money, they like to just drag that slider all the way to the right. Or else, if you feel really generous, you can just type in like $20.
And we've actually had like people on Hacker News when one of our books is launched and it gets on Hacker News, and they're like complaining because it made them feel guilty.
A couple people did, but then a couple people were like, but the point is, people like to give, like people like to support. This is why does Kickstarter work, right? You're signing up to pay later for something that may or may not work, may or may not get built. It's because you're helping create a thing, right? And like you don't get much chance. Usually creating a thing is hard, right? But helping to create something just by like paying a little bit of money for it is actually kind of awesome, right? That's why Kickstarter works. And so with Leanpub, it's like sort of like, well, the books are in progress, parts being written already, the author's working hard. Buy now, get the information earlier. If it's a technical book, that you can use that to do more consulting and make lots of money. And if it's other type of book, then you get at it earlier and support the author. And we show exactly what the author gets, and so it really motivates people. And
that's been really successful for us in that. I think you looked at the stats the other day.
About $1 for every $1 of minimum price, we get about $1.40 to the authors. So like there's an extra about 40% of like voluntary paying, which is just amazing. Like like if you think about.
It makes you feel like, hey,
people aren't all bad, right? It's like people are like voluntarily paying more.
And our authors love it. We've had multiple people email us and say, I want to sell X this way. That's not a book on me.
Yeah.
Can you please just like make a startup that just does the sliders?
Somebody should. But like literally, like you're better off, like even though like a 9% is 50 cents, like you're better off using us than eJunkie for an ebook, like just because of that. Like it's actually just better off. Now, here's the fun one, bundles. So, when you're programmers, you like to think generically. So we thought we had two authors they were both writing books about Node.js. And they're like, we want to sell our books together. And we're like, that's a good idea. Bundles. People like bundles. Bundling things is fun. There's things like Humble Bundle. Why can't we have bundles of books? And so we made Lean Bundle, which is the idea of, we thought, let's make a separate site for this because one of the books was not a Leanpub book. And we were like, well, it's just a PDF, right? So we made Lean Bundle and we set it up and we're like, okay, so you can sell bundles of any crap, like bundles of books, bundles of Leanpub books and other books.
And we were imagining people signing up and putting together a video and a book and
Right,
I don't know.
but there's lots of things. There's lots of stores on the internet that sell arbitrary digital goods, and the expectations of people would be like, well, I bought these 2 books and one of them has PDF, EPUB, and Mobi, and the other one doesn't. What's up? Where's my PDF? Where's my EPUB and my Mobi, etc. Like, we realized you have limited time in the day and you have limited cycles, and we just couldn't execute on that properly. And we were interested in this primarily as a Leanpub feature, and so we just pulled it into Leanpub and just let you create arbitrary bundles of your books, like your books and other books, and people are doing this. Like authors are making bundles of all their books. Authors are making, like 2 authors of like books about something called Enterprise Architect made a bundle of their 2 books together. I've never heard of it, but they've made it.
But they're selling books.
Yeah, they're selling books. It's fantastic. Yeah, and so the idea with bundles, it was totally custom. Like, we've had lots of failures along the way too, right? It's not like we launched and it was a hockey stick, right? It doesn't work that well. Usually there's a long flat part.
You never know if you're on the flat forever or the
Or
flat
other,
and then
before
the
it
hockey stick.
turns out. It's like, yeah, I'm on the flat part of a hockey stick. Success kid.
So yeah, bundles I think it was really interesting in that we don't know if there's a business there.
Lean Bundle.
Lean Bundle, I think there's
Somebody
a
could
business
do it.
there. We don't know.
But Gumroad.
We didn't test it enough.
If you take Lean Bundle and you get rid of the bundle part and you just have digital thing and make it simpler and better designed, it's called Gumroad, right?
But part of our hypothesis there was that there could be someone who curates bundles and gets a cut of the pay, and that was where the only way.
There was all kinds of. We like to have complicated hypotheses. You can't just be like, I'll just sell a link. It's like sell a link is like Gumroad, right? And, so the guy's awesome. Okay, publishers. So when we started, Leanpub's like, authors are getting screwed. They're only getting 10%, and like we need to make this great workflow, the best workflow in the world for making books, and give it to self-published authors and for free, etc. And who cares about publishers? And well, I mean, there are some publishers in the world where, like, hopefully all kinds of bad things happen to them. But lots of publishers are really good people and trying to make really good books, right? And let's say you're a small independent publisher and you aren't O'Reilly or Pragmatic or Manning, you haven't built your own workflow, you're suffering daily. You have Word documents the authors send you, and they're formatted like garbage, and then you have to somehow improve these things and then ship them off to Eastern Europe or wherever to get typeset, and it's just a big, terrible, horrible thing. Like,
I think anybody who does any agile practice and sees
what publishers
publishing
do,
workflow, actually has to live.
what they
through
actually
it.
do,
We just want to.
it's incredible. Okay, so their workflows are
They
terrible.
just couldn't survive.
So the publisher workflows are pretty bad, and what we're trying to do is help them by basically letting them use Leanpub as like a drop-in sort of book factory approach, where wouldn't it be amazing if authors could just write books in Markdown with not wasting all the time in formatting, etc., make a book manuscript, and then the publisher could just have their ebook right there, just ready for sale. And then when they're done, they could just click a different button, and then instead of spitting out a PDF, we could spit out InDesign, and then they could just style that and make their print book. So that's the hypothesis there, and then we're really early stage on that. Like, our current publisher thing that we're doing is basically, we have the ability to make a print-ready PDF, which is basically the Leanpub PDF with no cover page and with page numbers alternating and a few other little minor things, and that's it. We don't even have InDesign yet, so we're just doing customer development of that, talking to publishers, finding out like what works, what doesn't, what should pricing structure be, etc.
Right, and like when we first launched the publisher stuff, we were like, well, they get a free 30-day trial, so we're not going to build the PayPal support yet.
Yeah,
So we actually need it. Like, it's that.
We're that early on it. We're at the point of getting in front of a room of publishers and talk to them and find out what's
and
there.
we're still like really going out there and saying, you tell us, what do you want?
Yeah. So what's the angle with going to publishers? Is it just to gather information, or to
No, it's actually
We're going to sell them access to our workflow, because there's certain things that publishers need that we don't do. Like when they publish a book, they can't say Leanpub on the inside cover.
So
It
they
has
would
to say-
outsource that part of their work to you guys?
They just
Yeah.
use us like a
Tool.
SaaS.
Yeah.
We'd be like a SaaS thing,
SaaS,
where
okay.
like an ebook SaaS model solution, essentially. But this isn't a pivot, where you think of, oh, we tried that and it didn't work and now we're doing this. Like, Leanpub is focused about the best way in the world to write and produce in progress ebooks. And so all we're doing is like write and publish, not just self-publish, just publish in general, like for authors, for publishers, whatever. It's like we're just being not exclusive. We're not like excluding publishers anymore. We're just saying if you want to use this workflow, you're welcome to. You'd only need a few things, like a landing page for yourself, listing your books. You'd want to put your own Verso text in instead of Leanpub is awesome, self-publishing is awesome. As the Verso page for a publisher wouldn't really work, right? So we let them put their own Verso text in and stuff like that.
And they get the money, and then
they farm it out
split it up with the author as they do.
with their contract and not ours. Print books.
Print books. So this one was actually pulled out of this. One thing we
Checking
haven't
and
talked
screening.
about is the best thing we ever did with Leanpub was set up a Google group that our authors sign up on.
And we nag them, and we make sure.
No, they nag us.
Okay. No.
Okay.
We nag people to sign up for this group. It's like you sign up for Leanpub, join the Google group. You publish a book, join the Google group. You make a preview, join the Google group, right?
Yeah, and it's been just this amazing resource for us in that I wake up every morning and there's 5 emails from the Google group full of ideas, of what we should do, what authors want us to do, problems that they're having with the workflows, questions about how things work, and then all of these things are just great sources of information for us to make Leanpub better. And often also I'll wake up in the morning and someone's asked a question and an author has replied, and a couple more authors have said, well, actually I do it this way, and they have there's a real community there.
Yeah.
So being open around that and having just, we don't like publish a list of what we're working on next. We
informally give indications of what we're doing. It's not like here's the roadmap for April. You know.
But the Google group has been amazing, and one of the things it pulled out of us was our authors asking, hey, one author said, hey, I want to send my book off to Lulu or CreateSpace. I can't remember. I think it was CreateSpace.
One or the other.
But here's 3 things that are wrong with the PDF. I can't do it until you fix these 3 things.
And one is like, well, we have this cover image, right? Well, if you go into Lulu or CreateSpace, they want a wraparound cover. So you have a book with a cover. It's like, yo, dog, I like covers, so I have a cover, and then inside it I have another cover. Like, yeah. So, our stopgap solution was, well, just change your cover image to something like boring, like white, plain text, or whatever. Generate the book, and then change it back. It's like, that's terrible. That's so trashy. Right?
And there was a few other things that just don't look good in a print book that look fine or great on a PDF.
Like books, you open them up and the inner margin's bigger than the outer margin. But if you're reading a PDF, like you don't want to be like nerp, 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 right? So, and the page numbers like to alternate in books, but in an ebook it's ridiculous. Why would you have an alternating page number? So all these little things, but it's like for us, it's like, look, print books don't make us any money, and they don't help us they don't help the writing of ebooks or the selling of ebooks, so why would we put effort into making them better?
So then our authors were like, we'll pay you!
Well, actually, we were like, I think my email was like, if we said, hey, here we go, here's the thing, here's what we're gonna do, and it's $49, would you be like, yay, Leanpub is awesome, or Leanpub is a bunch of evil money gouging? I mean, like, people are like, awesome, awesome, awesome. It's like, okay, fine, we'll build a feature. There you go, here's the feature.
So
right?
I built it the next morning.
Yeah.
We shipped something.
We shipped it like a week and a half later because we had to work out some details. But yeah, the point is
basically I built it the next day.
Yeah.
And we shipped it and we said, is this good? And then one of our authors said,
here's
yes,
the laundry
except
list
for
of features.
this, and this. And we said, okay. And we fixed that up. And it was like, when we shipped it, it was like, yeah, this is pretty embarrassing. But that's, of course, the whole
minimum part.
The whole point of it. The minimum viable product thing doesn't end when you launch your minimum viable product. You're launching minimum viable features all the time. And so one of the things we did there is like, man, PayPal's really annoying. How about if we just take it off their royalties? Do you think they'll mind? No, of course they're not going to mind that, right? So they don't have to pay us. We get a bit more money because we're not paying PayPal transaction fees. So that's what we've done. And we still haven't actually added in.
And we probably
PayPal. We probably
never will. Who cares, right? Like, if an author doesn't make the $50 to cover the feature, well, that's our loss, right? And theirs, whatever. It doesn't matter. Reader email addresses. So here's a fun one. If you're writing an ebook yourself and you're selling it yourself from your own website, you get all the transaction info. If you bought my book from Amazon, I get nothing. What should Leanpub do? Right? This is an interesting thing. Sometimes, so what do you as a reader expect the author gets? What do you as an author want? So as an author, you want all the info in the world. Well, actually, some authors don't. Some authors are like literally, I don't want to know any info, or I just want to know the names.
But one author emailed us and said, when I sell on Gumroad,
No, Gumroad, it was like eJunkie.
eJunkie or something, I get their social insurance number.
It's basing on all this stuff. I get enough to do identity theft. It's like, no, we're not doing. So it's like, so but like people. So one of the parts of the hypothesis of Leanpub is that like publishing your book while you write it is really good because you get feedback. Okay, well, how do you get the feedback? Or readers should tell you things, right? So in your book, they can tweet at you, they can email you. You should make sure you are contactable by them, and that's pretty easy for you to do. Set up something, have them tell you. Well, how about if you're the author, you want to reach out to readers? Well, if I buy a book, I don't expect to get spammed. I don't expect to get added to a whole bunch of mailing lists. So if we made Leanpub just divulge all the information we got, that would surprise and piss off some people. Right? So there has to be some sort of fun, there has to be some sort of balance here, right? And so what we initially did was like, no, you get nothing. That's the easiest thing to ship. You don't have to build anything, right? And then after that, it's like, okay, well, you can send a message when someone buys the book. That's the equivalent of the Lulu thank you note. Like, someone buys your book, you can send them with the email that comes with the book, the author with a little note, like if they have a mailing list to sign up for, if they have whatever, that can be in the note. Okay, but well, with Leanpub, you publish your book, someone buys it, but then you're making lots of new versions. The readers need to know about these versions, right? So you should be able to email your readers when you've published a new version. That makes sense. So then put a little note we have a little text area where you put in your release note, and you click publish. Now, if we emailed readers every time you published, and you're really excited and you're publishing a lot, they're going to get unhappy. So it's obviously optional whether or not you want to email your readers when you publish, right? And then readers have to be able to opt out of that if they don't care, or if they read your book and it kind of sucked, and they don't want to get emailed over and over and over, right? So readers have to be able, so we have this, so then we ended up with this thing where it's like, okay, if you'll email your readers when you publish, and they have to be able to opt out of all the Leanpub email, or email just from you because you're annoying, or right. But all that can happen without you knowing their email address. And then, what if you just want to announce, hey, you're going to be in London and there's a workshop. You don't want to publish a new version, but you want to blast out something to your readers. Okay, if they want to get email from you, I guess then that's reasonable. So we'll have a form, email my readers form, right? So it's stuff like, here's a coupon code for, say you're doing another book. Your first book went over really well. You got a second book coming. Email your readers, or that's fine. So then they can opt out of that. It's the same opt out as opting out of email from the author. And none of this did you ever get their email address. But some authors really want reader email addresses, and lots of readers think that the author should have it, or want to let the author know they bought the book, because then they see each other at conferences like, I bought the book, yeah, no, I saw it, right? So, and in the sign up to let them know that you pay for the thing, people put their names and emails in, and obviously they expect that that's going to be visible. It's not going to.
So you can see that.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, down here. So now we've just adopted the very simple thing of, if you feel like sharing your email with the author, check the checkbox. And then when you've actually
You need to make that headline.
Hold on, I'm just trying to get my mouse over here. So if I felt like, and then also for existing books on my test account, for example, you have all kinds of preferences. Email me about new releases. Include me on author emails. Share my email address. This is my local testing, so I'm buying lots of fake stuff. Anyway, so yeah, so it's easy enough. Like, you can choose to share your email. You can choose to for a book that's not published yet. Hold on. So this is that bit about name, email. You can also choose, also share my email address with the author directly, so they can add me to their list, yada, yada, yada. And people, believe it or not, even though literally we barfed 2 whole lines of text here, people do actually check the checkbox. So sometimes we do things kind of deliberately clunkily just as a test of will people care, right? And that looks pretty clunky. So, yeah. So that's, so the notion of
So we started with something really small, got feedback from our authors, added, and We ended up with something that if we had built it from scratch, would have been really annoying and taken a long time and probably wouldn't have been as good.
And we also don't want to do this sort of Facebook thing of surprise, everything's now like this. We just shared all your info. And
Yeah. And yeah, we still,
You know.
there's a balance there. Yeah.
So, giving feedback to authors, how's that done? Is there kind of like a markup comment, in Word, you can kind of say here.
Oh, you mean like from readers? No, we haven't built anything into our books yet. They just have to email them or use them.
Page 49.
Sometimes
top
people actually,
paragraph 6.
on the book pages, we have discuss comments. We just added, if you ever want to have comments really easily, just add discuss, right? So we have discuss comments on the book page, and people can do that kind of stuff there if they feel like it. I mean, at some point we might build like a standard sort of, oh, here's some errata, here's some this, here's some that. We haven't done it yet because
It hasn't been dragged
it
out
hasn't
of us
been
by
pulled
our
out enough. There is a bit of a tug, but it's not enough. There's always things to do, right? And that just hasn't gotten up there yet. So a few general purpose lessons, like away from lean publishing and Leanpub and all that. So customer development's better when your customers can talk to you and when they can talk to each other. That's really good. So the Google group is really good because it's not just like us talking to our customers and interacting with them. It's them talking to each other. There's a real community. It's not like no pretense. Like there's actually a community of authors. And today someone used Leanpub as a verb. It was like, yes, on Twitter, I'm going to Leanpub this. It's like yeah.
This is super important, the tone for your community. So I think responsiveness, we'll talk about a bit more, but just being open and friendly with your community, but at the same time saying no a lot, but learning how to say no without being a jerk about it, I think is really important. You're gonna get users who love your service so much that they send you 3 or 4 emails a day saying, you should do this, you should do this, you should do this. You might, at first you're like, man, this guy's annoying. But you gotta flip the switch there, right? You gotta be like, wow, this guy is gold.
Yeah.
This guy is spending his spare time thinking about my product. That's amazing, right?
Yeah.
You gotta, so that, keeping that in mind when you're responding to these posts.
Yeah, or else it's like that with the reader email, right? Like you get people who are like, this is a deal breaker if I don't get reader emails, and it's like you have to figure out what's your right product. It's important. It's really important. I just can't emphasize enough how important having a group of people, like a Google group or something is. I found that with my own book, but with Leanpub especially, the notion of having a place where people can talk. It hasn't turned into a spam fest. It hasn't turned into a bunch of off-topic stuff. It's just this incredible resource for us.
And our authors who set up Google Groups for their books have also been really successful with that too.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons it works really well is we're really responsive. Usually it's you should be able to count in a single-digit number of hours from some email to either hello or the Google group to a response. Obviously we sleep sometimes, but it varies a little bit because we have a guy in Montreal. But
The sun never sets on Leanpub.
no, not quite close. So yeah, but there's Leanpub authors who would like to be responsive too. Right?
Yeah.
So this
And that goes to what we do. We haven't talked at all about the technology behind Leanpub, but I can make a fix and deploy it and have it live in under an hour. And that has been...
And most of the hours is running integration tests. You can get it live within 10 minutes if you want to, right?
Yeah. So having that ability and being able to respond when someone says, I found a bug, even just a typo, and say an hour later, yeah, it's fixed. People think that's just ridiculously amazing. And it's not that amazing. You should be able to do it. But if you do it for people, they're bowled over.
And then after that, go ahead.
Sorry, you were talking about changes, and one of the major changes you did was change in technology. Change from Git to Dropbox or WordPress to Markdown. So what did happen to your existing users?
We ported their books.
Yeah.
We didn't know, we might the books that were there. It wasn't too bad for you. We migrated them, which is if you're going to do something like that, sometimes it's spend the time, fix it, make it right for your customer, because they're not your user, they're your customer, right? And if you're switching, for example, we went from HTML to Markdown. So what do you do about the HTML manuscripts? you convert them to Markdown for the author. You're not like, good luck, have fun. You're like, here's your if the person's making it, wants to keep going on their Leanpub book and you've changed the technology, you fix it.
And that's not because if I lose this author, I'm losing a lot of money. That's because of the
It's the right thing to
expectation
do.
it sets, and it's the right thing to do. It's
Like, these people got you to where you are and you wouldn't be anything without them. You do the right thing. It's not, and like, it's really important. Like, so, discussion.
I guess following up to that question, do you find that you strand your authors sometimes? Like if they're familiar with WordPress and now they have to learn.
We had almost no authors. The good thing is we were, so you know how the part about like you have the flat part and then it takes off, right?
Yeah.
The number, like you can count single digit number of WordPress authors, right? And well, that was the part where we had to handhold and help out anyway. So no, nobody got, it wasn't like we had hundreds of WordPress authors and they all had to do, no, it was.
And that was like a really good clue to us that this is not working.
You can tell when there's the experience of you have this product and you think it's a good thing, hopefully, and you have no momentum and you're struggling really hard to get anybody to care, versus you have a product and people, it resonates. The difference in reaction you'll get from someone when you have a product that actually has a market fit with something, and market fit and sort of, that's nice, is like completely different, right? It's qualitatively different. It's not like, well, you can look at your stats and you can do that, but like within about 2 months of us having the right product, we had major change in how it's going.
It's kind of obvious when we made the right decision.
Yeah, I mean, we had, and then the funny thing is, like, we haven't talked stuff like the internationalization, like, so we thought, hey, wouldn't it be fun to like, people are like, well, I'm writing a book in German, or I'm writing a book in. So one of our authors, or one of our first real authors who was doing like good work, Andrew Dubber, he thought, well, wouldn't it be fun if I had my book translated as I'm writing it in lots of different languages? Yeah, it would be fun. It'd be awesome, right? So he started doing that. But then, of course, wouldn't it be nice if our landing pages were in the language of the book? Well, yes, that would be really good too. So do that. But so if you're building a feature for internationalization, at what point do you think you're going to need to support dialects of languages? Book 1? Yeah, book 1, right? So it's Scots. It's not Scots. It's not Scots. It's Scots. It's Doric, right? Like literally, like our data model is like, really, that has to get in there already? We only have it's like, but yeah, it's like it's reasonable and
yeah. And what was one of the very first books that was written in non-English language was in
Hebrew.
No, well, Hebrew. Yeah, that was fun.
Hebrew, Romanian,
and Romanian.
Chinese.
I don't know if you've ever seen Romanian, but it's got
lots of fun stuff
these
in it.
crazy, like it's got these big. I guess it's
And
an
Emacs
upside down
Emacs-
carrot on top
Emacs
of
handles lots of
characters
things
and
really
such.
well, but even Romanian was like,
Yeah, so
it's
that
hard
was
to
just,
tell.
we got put through the ringer on that right at the beginning, which was great, because then everything else we're like, Spanish,
Yeah, it's
no
like-
problem.
yeah, exactly. What, you mean this is a left to right language with not very many different characters? Oh,
Yeah.
we can do Hebrew and Romanian, bring it on, right? Like, I mean, we get, then our bug level is like, okay, this font isn't bold in Chinese. It's like, okay, we've hit that level of bug. Win,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Now, that's writing the book in language. Now, what about they don't actually publish?
no, writing and publishing.
No, and publish.
So we've internationalized the landing pages as well, and that actually is another great use of our Google group, where we've said to our authors, hey, we want to internationalize.
No, this is funny.
So-
So I bit off a bit more, so I
Yeah,
can tell
you
this
should.
because I suffered for it. So there's two things. So the writing part means you have to write the book in a given language, and click your button to preview or publish, and have it be the language, right?
And that's a technical.
That's hard and there's
purely
LaTeX
technical.
and it's, yeah. And then there's your landing page needs to be in that language. So then we have to actually internationalize the thing inside Leanpub, and strings that were just in HTML need to get put through the internationalizing. And then you learn things like, hey, languages handle plurals differently. IATN internationalization and like localization, right? Pluralization, that's a thing. Believe it, I'm serious. Like
What was
you don't
Russian that was
Russian, there's 4 different. There's like one, few, many, and other. There's like some languages different. Like I guess there's like different, like a different way to end a word based on like I got a bunch of them, or like a small bunch, or how big is your bunch? Like a small bunch or big bunch. And it makes sense, right? Like if you're thinking about language evolving, it's a good idea, and we just don't have that in English, right?
So luckily Rails takes care of most of that for us.
Well, the fun thing though, so
Yeah.
wait, hold on. Where was I going with this?
You were going with Google Translate.
Oh yeah. Where I'm going with this is basically crowdsourced translation by trolling, which is so I was like, okay, well we should translate these landing pages. So the obvious thing to do is put them through Google Translate, right? Just our purchase page, right, and the landing page. We haven't actively engaged Google Group, so I'm going to Google Translate the purchasing page and the checkout page, and I'm going to see some funny things here, right? So people who cared wanted their language in, we Google translated it, and it's like, here you go. And then I took the language files and made a GitHub repository of just the language files, and it's a submodule now. And so it's like, okay, if there's something which is hilariously awesome, please submit a fix, and we'll fix it, right? And then so it's like, this way, instead of having to ask, hey, please translate, the way I tested this, by the way, is I didn't do anything at all. I'm like, okay, we have a problem. You want your landing page translated. I took screenshots and I like annotated them like with Sketch, I think, like A through J of like, here, translate these words for me, please. And I maybe got 1 response or 2 responses. But then we kept getting asked. And it's like, okay, well, I guess handing someone a screenshot of some letters is kind of like giving them the finger. So I went and made a Google. So this is actually really the neat point. My screenshot of, hey, here's some letters, translate these things, please. That's like, go away, leave me alone. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna put a bit of effort into this and see if I get any nibbles. So I made a Google document of, here's all the text on the landing page, here's all the text in the checkout form. Like, just like in a spreadsheet, not like a document, just in a Google spreadsheet. I put English, and then it's like, okay, your language here, please provide a translation. And with that, I got like 8 or 9 replies in different languages. So like, okay, that's good enough to actually, we have engaged enough people in those languages to actually do it. But of course, I did it badly. I missed some things. Right, okay, so I missed some things to translate. Well, I'll just Google Translate those gaps, right? Okay, and then, if you get it wrong, you get it fixed. And so people did provide fixes, etc. And then we went a bit overboard, Len and I, my fault, is that I thought, hey, I'll translate the whole author app and Google Translate that. But the problem is that the amount of overhead that produces is too much. I should have actually done, where I went and just got excited, that's where I went off into the weeds. Just doing the thing where you let the demand pull it out of you, because what people really care about is the book landing page, the checkout form, and then the verso text and the stuff inside the book. And the thing is, doing the author app is so much work that I actually didn't even get to the verso text inside the book yet, right?
So who owns the copyright of the book?
Author. We own nothing. The author can. You can take it and simultaneously publish it on every other store on the internet. You can sell it on Apple. You can sell it on Amazon. You can sell it on eJunkie and Gumroad if you want. The publisher wants to pay you a contract. You sign it to them and you retire it. We actually had to build that feature the other week. Someone just got their book picked up. So things go both ways, right? So we take, like, there are authors who've written books for like big, large technical publishers who's like, forget it, I'm writing a Leanpub book, and then vice versa. We have, a Leanpub book just finishes up, it's doing really well, people like it. Oh, publisher took it, okay, fine, so I have to shut that book down and it'll go show up in a bookstore near you and on their ebook site. And that's fine, that's the life cycle of things, right? Is that, like, we think we're a really great way to write and sell books, and then when the thing's done, publishers who are smart will swoop in like vultures for the really awesome ones, possibly. And if they don't, it's their loss.
And that forces us, not having lock-in, forces us to be the best, right? Because if we're not the best, they're going to go elsewhere.
It's not, no one's contractually obligated to stay with Leanpub for anything. It's the author's content. We own nothing.
Are you at the point that you'll see publisher come and scout through your website looking for books?
I think it's
lost
happening.
one. We've lost one of our.
Yeah, so we had to build a feature the other day to retire a book because one of our authors had gone and got a contract with another.
And the thing is, that author had actually done a book. Like, it goes back and forth, right? Like, we have lots of our Leanpub. So we have so many great authors. We have so many great authors who've done. Lots of these authors have written books for the big publishers before, so they know how what the grass looks like on that side, and they know what it looks like on our side, right? So it works both ways. And then when the book's done, well, that's just another channel, right? Like, we don't make print books, and if you don't feel like doing it yourself, you can just let a publisher do it for you.
Before you sit down and start working on a feature, how big a chunk have you planned to do?
In terms of like UI, or in terms of
just in your process in general. You get this feedback and people are pulling a feature, how far do you go in planning before you sit down and start coding or translating?
Pretty informal. It's pretty much like just a.
We rarely draw screens up. I'm more iterative than Peter, I would say.
Yeah.
I tend to throw something out that's really embarrassing and see what happens.
Well, I think it's more. I'm more. Here's how it is. If Scott and I are going to do something badly, if I'm going to do something badly, it's going to look a lot better than if Scott does something badly.
Yeah.
But if Scott does something badly, it'll be better unit tested than if I do something badly. Right? So I care more about how something looks like and how it's presented and what the copy looks like. Whereas Scott can write copy that has like lowercase letters where there should be uppercase letters and stuff like that, and it's like I can tell what page. Back in the day, right? I'd be like, "You're trolling. You're literally just trying to make me do all this just by trolling me," and then I'd be writing like code without very good test coverage at all, and it'd be the equivalent, right? So, that's why you have to find co-founders is people who compliment you, right? So, otherwise you have like code that would break all the time, or else you have things that look like.
But for a big peach, like I think the most recent one we've done that was big enough was the PDF, print-ready PDFs. And we spent half an hour, and we read the emails from the authors, and we said, we can do this. And I was like, I don't want to do PayPal. Can we just take it out of the royalties? And we said, yeah, okay, we can do that. And built something, and I built the first version of the PDF generator, and I said, hey, is this good, Peter? And back and forth a bit, and then that was it. Like, it was really minimal process.
So you brought up this thing about publishers and how you might create or you're in the process of creating a SaaS model sort of for them. I'm in software development and I'm trying to use Agile, quote unquote. And it's tough to write software and then also simultaneously build the collateral for that. Depending on the level of your company, you may want lots of marketing collateral, who knows what. I can imagine somehow this could be useful in a kind of SaaS model to writers, but internally, so it's not really meant to sell to the public. So, and I'm not too sure how you guys monetize necessarily, but some kind of service.
Like internal documentation?
Yeah, but done, because it's lean, you can like do it in an agile kind of iterative manner, which lines up with the agile process you're trying to follow.
So the question is like, should Leanpub get in a business of document workflows where like this is just internal to some organization and they produce documents and we had charged
and publishing internally.
Some sort of appliance-y thing.
Yeah, so we're in a really fun and interesting space right now where we have this technology that can be used for all these different things and we're experimenting with them. That's one we've thought about for sure.
We've thought about and the thing is we're not that good at enterprise sales. We don't have that much like enterprise sales bandwidth. And so for us, it has to be something that like think about like GitHub, right? Like yes, enterprises can use GitHub now, and they have GitHub Enterprise or GitHub FI or whatever it's called now. But GitHub became GitHub by like being the thing that individual developers chose and thought was the best way to do stuff, and then the enterprise stuff comes afterward, right? And so our approach with the publishers is the same thing. Where like we're focused on being the best thing for opinionated, smart authors, and then their stuff follows on. And then in terms of internal processes, maybe like later.
And I don't necessarily mean for large enterprises. I mean startups.
Right.
Yeah. So.
People have had like I have my documentation in Dublin Core. Can you make a user manual for me? And we're like, we could, but we just that kind of thing. You just have to sort of be like, take a note of it and be like, we can't do that right now.
And I think you need to be passionate about what you're doing, and we're passionate about books and writing and publishing, and that's where our focus is right now. And I think that would defocus us. So unless we've already hit a home run and we're looking for another market, we still have lots of work to do in what we're doing right now.
For clarity, so far whatever I've heard, people come and use your service because of the tools and the community and what they get out of it. Services like Kobo go a little bit further than that, but they do advertising for their authors. So if you're like with Kobo, you get an email. If you're with Amazon, you pick the books that you're interested in and say, do you have any plans to go that way?
We're gonna
actually advertise for that?
No, yes and no. I mean, we're gonna have a newsletter at some point, like the equivalent of Kickstarter, for example. They have like a projects we love email, right? I mean, there's a lot of Kickstarter projects, and that email will have only a few things in it. So, for all intents and purposes, Kickstarter does no advertising at all for their projects, nor should they, right? Like and similarly, like neither does anybody else. no one, unless you're like J.K. Rowling or a big famous author, no one's gonna really market your stuff like that well. Publishers, like I mean, I wrote a couple of books for a real publisher. Like you don't, like they fill channels, and the marketing work they do fills channels and stuff, right? It's not about like advertising that way and demand. Like they have direct email, and that works. And we have like we'll end up with something like direct email and like a Leanpub Twitter account. We can use that more.
And I think things like the Amazon, if you buy this book, then you might like these ones. We can do stuff like that, and I think that
the bundle thing already is that, but that's something that authors do for themselves with each other, or else by themselves, the bundles. But the suggested book thing should totally be there. And another thing we have to make better use of, that we're going to make better use of, is a dashboard. Is that when we used to play, when you bought a book, we just sent you here's your links, have fun, like email. Now we send you the email of like, here, go to your dashboard and download them. And then obviously from the dashboard we can market, hey, buy these books. We don't do that yet, we will though. Or else, hey, click on this tab and learn how to write a Leanpub book. It's awesome and fun, you should do that. And so we have to make better use of, like for us, for Leanpub to succeed, we have the viral, like, you know, to the next order of magnitude, like, it has to be about the viral loop. And the viral loop for us is a bit funny, because what happens is someone reads a Leanpub book, thinks it's a good idea, signs up, changes their account to become an author account, starts writing a Leanpub book, publishes the first version, someone reads that, thinks it's a good idea, etc. And that's the viral loop. However, the problem is that part of that loop is writes enough of a book that it's a first version that's for sale. And even though it's not a finished version, which would take like a year or so, it's still going to be like between like, you know, a few weeks and a few months. So the process is slow, right? We get, you know, thousands of readers, you know, an amazing conversion ratio from readers to authors. It's incredible. Like the loop is real, but it's not like Twitter where I can write a tweet and then I'm like, hey, my tweet's awesome. You have to read my tweet. Everybody look and follow me on Twitter because I wrote this tweet and it's fantastic, right? Writing a book is a bit longer. So, or even part of a book is a bit longer. Couple orders of magnitude.
Yeah.
So that's why that's going to take a while.
I have a slightly different question because I once published a paper book, and the publisher was really important to also distribute it to libraries. So I'm wondering, what kind of role do libraries play in this whole publishing?
That's actually,
we have a checkbox. So it's controversial inside us. Yeah. We have a checkbox where it's like, do you want to allow libraries to buy your book? Because it's complicated. Let's say you're the world's biggest fan of libraries, but your book's not done. If the library buys the book, what if they never update it? Then you have a bunch of incomplete, incoherent information that you don't update, and it's in a library now. So let's say, even if you're the biggest fan of a library, you still might not want to check that checkbox until your book is done. And now, the initial thought inside Leanpub was, no, Peter, you're nuts. And I probably thought that too. But it's actually surprising how many authors like explicitly say, do not let libraries buy my book yet.
well, it's also, libraries don't know what to do with
Yeah, they're like, what do you, ebooks in general, let alone ebooks that aren't done.
There's no DRM on anything in Leanpub.
They don't teach it in library science school.
Libraries depend on DRM for ebooks, right? They lend you out an ebook, and then 2 weeks later it disappears off your device.
And so we sell these no DRM PDFs, EPUBs and MOBIs. How many copies should a library buy? And so our answer is, dear Mr. Librarian or Mrs. Librarian, please pay the suggested price and buy the number of copies that you want to lend out at a time. Please do that if the author has checked the checkbox. And I think that's like the best sort of vanilla blanket policy. But even with that policy, we let authors say, hey, library, please don't buy this. And that's just a note on the purchase page of, please don't buy this library. I mean, they can't stop a librarian from buying a book and putting it in their library. Like we don't DRM anything.
Pretty good at
but like, yeah, exactly. Like, that's what I'm trying to say. You don't worry about like, oh no, the library's on BitTorrent, right? Yeah, piracy has existed forever. It's going to exist forever, and it's not your problem, right? Obscurity and sucking is your problem, not piracy.
For $0 if you want.
So our minimum price, you can set a minimum price above $0.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like to be, oh, you're not on the internet. I mean, our top selling book has a minimum price of $10, I think, and it suggests it's 15. And the here I got a relative.
Probably have some.
Yeah. So there's like, one of our best selling books has a suggested price of $29. Everybody's like, oh no, Apple and Amazon are so evil, they're forcing us to sell our books between $3 and $10. No, they're not. You can sell your book for whatever you want to sell it for, and people will either pay that or they won't. And, you know, yeah. And then with minimum suggested, you can get more funding.
My best selling, how many copies have you got?
For what? We've had books that have sold more than 1,000 copies, you know, and when you're charging $15, $20, $25, and you're paying 90% minus 50 cents for royalties, that works out.
Yeah, I think your hunch about removing that in progress thing is a good hunch because it sounds antithetical to lean, which is limiting work in progress. So it's almost like we have a system to allow your thing to remain in progress when in reality.
Oh no! Well, of course. Oh no! We don't kick you off. We don't kick you off. When you're done, we hope the book stays.
No, but
No, I'm just talking about terminology.
yeah, there's
Yes.
a terminology. So, yeah, I mean, so you'll never, when you're buying a book, you don't see the word in progress. And
The only time you see anything on the book buying page is if the book is extraordinarily short, so short that, like, you know, it's really short. We're talking like a handful of pages. Then we have an automatic, hey, this book is blah number of pages, blah number of words, and you're doing this to support the author.
you know, we
didn't think that would ever have to happen.
We thought we spend most of our time pushing our authors to push the published book.
You have 100,000 words. Trust me, you can put it up before, you know.
It's going to be all right.
It's okay, right? Like, you have 72,000 words or 54,000 words, 80,
But then we recently had a few people
Yeah, we had
publish
the
with
flip
like
side. So
less than
it's
2,000
okay.
words.
Yeah, so
Okay,
we have
that one we might want to put a flag on. So.
And, you know, and it's like, it's people that, we don't think these people are bad actors, it's just like,
They get excited.
you get excited,
Like,
or else you
let's
think
do
it's a
this.
Kickstarter,
I'm lean.
right? But there's like, you should bring something to the table, right? And that, for me, it's like 2 chapters, one or 2 chapters, 20 pages, maybe, I don't know, that's a good start. Like, get started, like have something there, like, my own threshold for my own writing is like, if I'm writing something technical, it should save someone like 1 or 2 hours, if they're awesome. And like, that translates to 10 hours if they're not awesome, right? So that's worth your money. Like, basically, the book should be worth the money. And most books are worth the money before they're done. And most books are actually worth more before they're done because the information's newer. If it's if it's a computer programming book and I'm gonna teach you what Node.js, like, or some random new thing, say Meteor comes out, right, or whatever, like Knockout, you know, any kind of new thing, the information is worth more money when it's new. So, yeah, you're doing someone a disservice by like, I'm not going to give you all this really good information because I'm busy like working on grammar and index entries. No, you're not. Get it out there. I think we've probably helped people a really long time. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.